Good day and welcome to another edition of Insight. I'm your host, Michael Sharp, and today we have a very special guest, Ms. Lisandra Rickards. She's the CEO of the Branson Center for Entrepreneurship for the Caribbean, if you may. First of all, I want to say special welcome to you.
Thank you.
And exactly what is the Branson Center for Entrepreneurship?
We're a hub for scale-up entrepreneurs. So
Scale up.
yes,
What is scale up?
scale-ups are entrepreneurs that have already started. They have a product, they have customers, and they're trying to figure out how to scale their operations to grow revenues, hire more people, and have a bigger impact on the economy.
All right, so that's question number one. Question number, Branson Center. What's the Branson about? Where is that? Is it what I'm thinking?
Yes, it is. So it was founded by Sir Richard Branson in 2011, and because his company, Virgin, the Virgin Group, there are...
Virgin Airlines.
Exactly.
That's a big brand.
Virgin Airlines, Virgin Holidays, Virgin Unite. Virgin Unites, which is the foundation, and Virgin Holidays, which is the tour company arm of Virgin, joined together, and Virgin Holidays does a lot of business in the Caribbean, and they wanted to give back by helping to spur more entrepreneurship and creative energy, and so they launched the Branson Center here in 2011.
How has it been?
It's been great. We've had a lot of changes over the past seven and a half years since we started. We first started in Montego Bay. Virgin Atlantic flies into Montego Bay, so we were headquartered there for quite a long time. And then we moved to Kingston in 2017 because we wanted to be closer to where the hub of business is in Jamaica. And 70% of our entrepreneurs actually are based here in Kingston. And when we started in 2011, we served mostly startups, people who had an idea or who had just started very early stage in their businesses, like year one, year two in their businesses. But when we moved to Kingston, we really saw a gap and a need for people serving entrepreneurs who had already started but had hit a barrier, a plateau, and wanted to move beyond that. And so that's where we are now.
Okay. In other words, you took a strategic decision to move to Kingston where more business people. Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense. In other words, get you guys in business called a spatial link to your business situation.
There you go, yes.
There you go. What is he up to these days, Mr. Branson? He seems to be involved in a whole lot of stuff. To what extent is he aware of what's going on in Jamaica?
Well, he's been here. He came quite a bit last year, particularly around creating a new Caribbean climate accelerator, it's called. So this is a big focus for Richard and for the Virgin Group. You know, Richard was at home in the British Virgin Islands in his wine cellar while Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria passed through. Right, some of the strongest Category 5 storms we've seen in the Caribbean.
He lived it out, and did the wines make it?
Well, I think everyone in the cellar made it.
Okay.
But when he came up above ground, everything was gone. His home was gone. His island was decimated, Necker Island. And it was a shock and very jarring. And it showed the world that the Caribbean is on the front lines of climate change. And that if we don't take action to protect ourselves, then the world isn't going to come to our aid until we make a big ruckus about it and start putting plans in place from now for what we already see happening in the climate. So he came to Jamaica quite a few times last year setting this up. The Climate Accelerator was launched here in Jamaica in August. And we've been a part of that, and we're doing work with them, and we're just about to launch a Blue Economy program as part of that initiative.
Blue economy, we're going to get into that because that sounds like the sea.
Yeah, it is. Exactly, exactly.
That sounds like the sea. But help me. This is a matter that the word entrepreneurship is, as far as I'm concerned, being used so loosely.
Yeah.
If you're a businessman, are you automatically an entrepreneur, or what's the distinction?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, right? So around the world, I think a broad definition is an entrepreneur is someone who sees a problem that's not being addressed and comes up with an innovative, creative solution to that problem. So is everyone who starts a little hustle or starts a business an entrepreneur? A lot of people disagree on that. Some people think you have to have an element of innovation, particularly tech innovation, to be termed an entrepreneur. Whereas other people think that if you've taken risk it's a significant risk to go out on your own and create something new. So for those people, entrepreneurship is more about risk than it is about tech. So there's a bit of a debate around that.
Where do you fall?
Oh, it's hard because in this economy, which has been stagnant for many, many years, we're just starting to see some energy again in the economy. Taking any kind of risk is a big deal, and you're up against a lot of administrative burden. It's a lot, and the toll it takes on people who make that decision is high. And so I fall more on the side of risk. But what we try to encourage at the Branson Center is to inject innovation in people who have already taken the risk, or in companies that have already taken that risk to go out and start something. Now we see, okay, how can we inject innovation so we can get to that next level of scale?
You're falling on my side. And I also like to think that an entrepreneur is someone with vision, who can look beyond the needs of the immediate needs of the company and to see beyond and to go there, as opposed to once you start a hustle, then you're an entrepreneur. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in a very strict definition, but you know, most entrepreneurs start with that vision, but the reality of operating, especially in this environment, is difficult, and they often get drawn into the day-to-day operations and are often unable to pull themselves back because it's one thing after another and you're running all the time. And in order to get to that stage of being able to sit back and be a visionary and work on the business instead of in the business so much, you have to have the right team. And that's the big gap that we're seeing in the economy. Entrepreneurs feel that they have to do everything themselves, or because of monetary constraints, they don't have the money to take on people. And so we see that people get stuck in the doing and can't be as visionary anymore as when they first started.
That's correct. Yeah. That is real. Help me. The Branson Center would have set for itself goals, and how do you know if it's doing well? What are the things that you'll say, well, all right, we did well last year compared to this year? What's that?
Sure. So now you want me to go into teacher mode, right?
Yes.
Because strategic planning, we have KPIs, key performance indicators, that we set at the end of every year for the next year. So our big KPIs in terms of impact, we have impact KPIs, and then we have more operational KPIs. So our impact objectives are like, what is the revenue growth of the entrepreneurs that have come through our program? What's the change in profitability and the group as a whole? How many new jobs have they created? How many existing jobs were remaining there that they didn't get rid of? So we track that at the entrepreneurial level. And we know that we don't necessarily directly impact those numbers ourselves, because there's a lot of other factors that goes into those numbers, like the state of the economy, availability of capital, all of that stuff. But we still track it because we believe that we can have some impact on them. So one number that we're really proud of is that for our cohort that went through our program last year, the average increase in profitability was 45%. Yeah.
The business that you guys have been involved with, 45%?
Increase in profitability. And that tells us that our program really helps people think about the structure of their businesses, how to get efficiency out of it, and including where do they need someone to help them fill the gaps so that they can free themselves up to be more strategic, go out and make more sales, etc. And we're really proud of that, actually. Yeah.
You use a term that most people don't recognize in business, plateau. Work on that for me. Explain exactly what's the plateau and how dangerous it is in your business.
Well, one thing that every entrepreneur has to decide is, do they want to run a lifestyle entity that's more salary replacement, right? So they built this company because they were looking for a job or couldn't find a job, and as long as they make enough to cover their own expenses, they're happy chugging along at that rate. And many people are very happy with a business like that. There's nothing wrong with a business like that. But when you talk about the definition of maybe high impact entrepreneurship, that's what we go after. which are people who have that vision to build something that exists beyond them, that impacts the lives of other people, their employees, etc., that grows, that can generate momentum in this economy, like a Grace Kennedy. How many stories do we have in Jamaica of entrepreneurs that started small and built to big business, 500 employees or more? Not enough. We don't have enough of those stories. It's the same 20 companies that everybody's looking at and hitting up year after year. So to go back to your question of plateau, for us, a plateau is a company that wants to have that legacy, wants to scale, wants to move beyond just generating the same level of income over and over every year, but they don't know how. Their company has reached a point where they're seeing same levels of growth or just a minuscule growth year over year, and they want to move beyond that.
Tell me though, is it recognizable? Because you could be in your plateau and not even understand that you're in there.
Great question. You have to be tracking the numbers to know where you are in your business, right? You have to be tracking. And this is something I'm very passionate about. Yes. Because it is very difficult to stay on top of the tracking, stay on top of sales, stay on top of strategy, stay on top of suppliers and partners and customers. It's very difficult for a CEO to do that without help. But it is imperative that you have systems set up so you know what's happening in terms of cash and income and profitability in your business, so you know if all the energy and activity that you're doing is getting you somewhere and is growing and is moving in a direction that you're happy with. And so the only way you can really know if you've plateaued or not is if you have a systematic way at looking at your numbers every month, every week.
Empirical data.
Yes, hard data. And you know what? I'm going to go off the rails a little bit here and say the way that we've been taught math in our country has put people off of numbers, right?
We're going to come back on that because, boy, I tell you, somebody put me off early in my life.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll be right back on Insight. Welcome back to Insight. Our special guest is Lisandra Rickards. She's the CEO of the Branson Center for Entrepreneurship. And CEO could mean Chief Entrepreneurship Officer, not necessarily Chief Executive Officer. All these changes as we move on in life. Nothing is static. But we left at a high point, and we want to go right back there, and she got her passion coming through in terms of the numbers. And she is making the point that you cannot grow your business or not even know if it's growing. You can feel if it's not growing if you don't measure. And a measurement is a chief component of management. You teach it in every management 101 class. But you must measure. But you're saying that we kind of reticent towards measuring because the maths didn't come to us right. What on earth do you mean by that?
So I've been with the center for the past 6 years. So 6 out of 7 years of its existence. And I didn't start as CEO. I became CEO 3 years ago. But over the past 6 years that I've been there, I've seen a general aversion to math in our entrepreneurs and in our people in general. And the question is why? Why do people not like math so much? And it goes back to how we're taught math to the point where now, anytime somebody sees a spreadsheet, their eyes glaze over. Or if you look at financial statements, which every entrepreneur has to be able to understand financial statements in their business, at least just know how to read them, eyes glaze over. Why is that? Why do we hate math so much? And then when we teach it in a different way and we show that math and numbers equals money in your pocket and money in your business, then everybody's excited and wants to know, okay, I want to be able to predict how much money I'm going to get at the end of the month based on historical data. So if we, and I'm not a professional educator, but if we could find a way to make math more interesting, I think we would generate better entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree with you because somehow it can't get worse, right? So we need to remove the glaze and the glaze from the classrooms because most people, and they say it's a left brain, right brain thing, and you get the sense that, but you are making the point that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you must at least know how to read it and understand it. And when you see it, you don't run away from it.
Right.
Because it's all logical, isn't it?
It is. Math is life.
Math is
right.
life.
Math explains life. But okay, I won't go that deep. But
okay.
I will say that if you want to run a business, you cannot delegate the responsibility for numbers in your business to someone else. So a lot of entrepreneurs say, I will do the product, I will do the creative, and somebody else will figure out my accounts. I can't bother with that. Yes, you must always have an accountant to do the grunt work for you that can present you with the numbers. But if you don't know what questions to ask, if you don't know how to read the statements, you're doing yourself a disservice as an entrepreneur and possibly setting yourself up to not be in a great situation if you can't explain and know what's going on the financial side in the company.
Yes. Help me with, because I'm down to get to the blue economy.
Okay, yes.
Help me with the movement that the Branson Center has movement, because you know we into the entrepreneurship world hear about idea to product, yeah, whatever the product, whether it's tangible or intangible, but it's a service. You're saying that the Branson Center moved from startups to scale-ups. But scale-ups is a process. At what point of the scale-up? Is it the startup side of the scale-up? Because it will still get you anyway. At what point do you feel it's okay to stay with these guys? And what is it that you offer to them?
Sure, great question. So for us, let's take a very simple definition of startup to scale up. Revenue. What size revenues are you at in your business right now? So if you're below 10 million, we say that you're still in startup phase. And that's very unique to our economy. Not a lot of people define it that way because usually it's defined by number of years in operations. Yes. But there are some things that are structurally, difficult to cross that chasm. And for us, that $10 million level is if you can push past that ceiling in your economy, you've now evolved to a place now where you're going to be starting to generate some momentum. And then between 10 and 25 million Jamaican, now you're starting to grow, you're starting to put systems in place, you're coming out of the product and iteration phase into now operationalizing certain things. And then when you hit 25 million, Jay, in your business, now I think you're in a small business category, and up to 200 million, that's where we step in. So minimum of 25 million up to 200 million.
The small business phase, you're recognizing at 25 million.
That's our internal definition.
Yes.
The Development Bank of Jamaica has a specific definition that we also work with that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's all right. 200 million and above.
That would be more medium size, yeah.
Okay. And this is 200, let me just want to be sure what numbers we're talking about here. Profitability
revenue.
Or just straight revenue?
Yeah.
Revenue. Because you haven't dealt with my expenditures.
Right.
As yet. As long as my revenue is that. But what if my profit margin is less than that?
Well, that's what we want to work with you on, right? So you come in at 25 million minimum, 200 million at the maximum. That's our range, that's our target range of entrepreneurs that we work with now. And we put you through a program that we hope will improve both the revenue side and the profitability side. So I can go into what that program looks like.
Yes, please. Please, don't let me stop you here.
So we have a mix of training, governance, and access to capital.
Training, governance, and access to capital. Access to capital.
Okay. Right. And you go through certain phases, so you start with training. So the very first thing you come in and do is a boot camp that helps you to structure your business in a certain way, understand growth triggers, growth strategy, industry analysis, competitive analysis, scalability, and we teach you financials, how to read them in a basic way, how to even try to work with your accountant to create good financial statements. And then we move into the governance phase. So after you go through the training...
Hold on, let me hold you with the training phase. Is that where you teach them how to be passionate, how to be gung-ho, how to remove the old things that they used to do and see the light? What happens there? Do you see people move, the lights turning on in their heads? What happens
Yes,
there?
yes. So we definitely see the lights go on in the sense of, wow, I could have been operating this company in a different way. Yeah. This whole time that would free up resources, that's more strategic, that's more intentional about where I want to take the business. So the lights definitely go on. A lot of growth, a lot of new thinking in that phase. But we go straight into governance after that. So, and because once you've started to set down your plans, so this is a planning phase for us too. Now we want to help you hold yourself accountable to those plans. Yeah.
Governing phase. Go deeper for me.
All right.
What is it you get in the governing phase? Now you're the boss. These are your responsibilities. What happens there?
So every company now gets matched with an advisory board in the governance phase, which consists of 5 advisors that we draw from our mentorship pool. So we have a pool of about 200 mentors that are attracted to us because we have a great brand, Richard Branson, and they want to help Caribbean entrepreneurs. They want to advise Caribbean entrepreneurs how to grow, how to scale, how to manage their operations better. We have some great local mentors, some great regional mentors, and amazing diaspora and international mentors as well that all want to help Caribbean entrepreneurs. Yes. For example, we sent 2 of our entrepreneurs to this fantastic event on Necker Island last month. And they met with Vishen Lakiani, who is the founder of Mind Valley, this big online content platform. And they both got mentorship out of that. But so we organize all of these mentors, amazing global mentors and local mentors, into advisory boards and match them with some of the with all the companies in our program. So you get 5 advisors for each board, and you're to meet with your board every month. The board gets access to some of the plans that you created and helps hold you accountable to growing your company and acting in according to the plans. How long is this boot camp? So our whole program is 6 months.
6 months,
yeah.
Okay.
So the training piece is about first month or 1 to 2 months. Yes. And then the governance piece, it's a 6-month match, but it starts in the 2nd or 3rd month.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
of the
so
program.
In other words, it's rigid and it's ongoing and
I wouldn't say it's rigid, it's structured. It's
okay.
structured.
It's structured.
Yeah.
And then the hard part, access to finance.
Right. So the governance piece is very important in the access to finance piece, because up until this point, most entrepreneurs are used to running their businesses themselves, making all the decisions without any input from anyone else. Control. That's what people get used to, control, right? But when you start thinking about capital now, and people are going to take their hard-earned money and invest in you for you to grow their money, now there needs to be more people making decisions in the company, and you need to be able to listen to guidance and take action with input from others. So before you even get to the capital phase, we start setting you up for that through the advisory board. Yeah.
So in other words, transparency.
Yes.
No one person makes the decision.
Yes. Accountability.
Accountability.
Holding yourself accountable to plans that you came up with the participation of others who have experience in the industry, who can see things that maybe you can't, and being open to having that discussion and creating a path for your company with the inclusion of other voices outside of just your own.
We're going to need to take another time out, as they say, and we'll be right back on Insight. Welcome back to Insight. Lisandra Rickards is our special guest, CEO of the Branson Center for Entrepreneurship. We left at the point where we talked about access to finance and the systems that must go in place, and that can make you or break you. But here's the question. If I came up with this business, and notice the I, right? And I decided to go to the Branson Center, and I decided to go to boot camp, and I decided to do that. And now you're telling me what? I have to, but I need some funds now. What happens? What's wrong with that?
Right. So when you're now thinking about going to capital, that's when you really have to decide if you are ready to take that leap into building a business that has a legacy beyond you. The business has its own identity beyond you. The business will exist outside of you. You have to really get your mind around that as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you can stay having a lifestyle business that doesn't grow that much, but maybe provides you with a salary and living expenses. But if you make that decision to create a legacy now, you're going to have to change your mindset. And we help you to do that by giving you an advisory board to start now helping you with your decision making, getting input from other people that have experience in the business. And now we start prepping you for capital. So you can't just go straight and say, look at me, I am a great entrepreneur, I have vision, I have passion, I deserve your money. It doesn't work like that.
But if my brand is big, you know, I mean, it might not be a Charlie Branson, Richard Branson, or whatever Branson brand it might be, but the brand is big in my space.
Great.
Can I use that? Can I use that? And you guys, you know, teach me how to leverage that brand.
We absolutely will teach you how to leverage that brand. But the question is, we first have to make sure that you understand the process around acquiring and using external capital.
So you're giving me options.
Right.
You want to stay in your lane? Stay in your lane, but this is what you do. That's what you're telling me?
Right.
Okay.
And you have to be open to that process because that process is dictated by the owners of capital, right? It is not dictated by you. So you may feel, I deserve other people's money, but we now help you to be prepared to accept and to responsibly utilize other people's money in your business. Because entrepreneurs, this is something that I'm going to say that might be a little bit controversial, you're not entitled to other people's money. There is a process, there's a decision-making process that has to happen, and you have to show that you will be a good steward of other people's money before you get access to it.
Do you recommend most of the time, some of the times, or a few times, that people go with a public offer, go on the stock markets? If you're moving, you're transitioning, and you want to build, do you say put out an IPO? Do you naturally follow that path?
That's our dream outcome, right? Because when we're getting that momentum on our stock market, when we have a lot of IPOs, a lot of transactions in the economy, mergers and acquisitions like we're having now you start seeing growth and momentum building in the economy. And that's our vision and our mission in the Caribbean, to create more dynamic Caribbean economies through entrepreneurship. That's the end goal. But there are a few steps before you get there.
Yes.
And each step prepares you more and more to be able to access and use external capital. Because you have to grow into it, right? You have to grow into the systems. You have to grow into the reporting. You have to grow into the stewardship of other people's money before you get listed on a stock exchange, which now has a whole bunch of other regulations and reporting that you have to follow once you're now publicly listed and taking money in that forum. Yeah.
Now to the blue economy.
Oh, before we get there,
Yes.
one last thing.
Yes, indeed.
So our process is we put you through a lot of prep sessions, investment readiness sessions, investment preparation, how to pitch for money, how to come up with a value for your business, how to communicate that value to investors. And then we put you in a room with 8 people, CEOs of major institutions that have capital, like Grace Kennedy, Proven, NCB, all JMMB, they're all in the room, as well as some smaller entities like Norbrook Capital. And you pitch to them, and they decide to invest in you or not, and then you move forward into due diligence.
And this is not a movie, TV
no,
show
it's
here.
not
No cameras
publicized,
here.
no cameras.
This is serious.
This is real.
Really or really not get the money and the same template, right? This
Yes,
is real stuff.
but it's not a Shark Tank, right?
Okay.
Where nobody's tearing you down for the sake of TV.
Okay.
They ask questions, real questions, and look at whether they really want to invest in this as an investment opportunity for their companies. And we're looking at $500,000 in investment, up to $2 million in investment, or even more than that. That's the size that people are pitching for in this room, right? So we have actually about $3 million of active deals right now in due diligence. Because after you pitch, there's a whole process before you get the money. Due diligence, term sheets, shareholders agreements, then you get a disbursement, and then you have to manage the money and report to the board on what you're doing with the money. So this is the process it takes to take on external capital. And don't go in it thinking that it's like Silicon Valley or Shark Tank. It's not. It's a process that you have to get prepared for.
And people are interested? It sounds like serious business.
You have to have the vision for growth and scale and what your company can do, the impact that you can have. Because you can't get there by just bootstrapping. Often you're going to need more capital to get where your vision wants to take you.
These are not mom and pop stores.
No, it's not.
These are people that are thinking big, thinking beyond their families, thinking that after they're gone, maybe a room might be named after them.
Exactly.
You know.
And so that is where we need to move more people in our economy towards, that level of visionary thinking. We need more of a pipeline of those companies coming up saying, yes, I want that capital. I have a vision for where this company can go. I have a vision of the impact I can have on my country. We have to stop thinking small. It's not enough to start small and stay small. We need to grow beyond that as individuals, as companies, and as an economy.
Help me. I like the passion. Help me. But let's go back.
Yes, okay.
To the classrooms. Are we teaching people to be big enough there? I mean, because you're ending up having to correct some serious math, approach to math, approach to business and size concept and I in the business. Go down to the curriculum. Do we need to change anything down there?
Yes, we do.
Let's go ahead. Tell me.
You're trying to get me in trouble now, Michael.
Yes, please. Oh, please. It's the only way we can think outside the box.
It's about mindset. So how are we training our people to think? Are we training them to memorize facts and regurgitate them? Or are we training them to innovate, to invent, to create a vision, to think about a strategy to get there? Are we training employees? And we have to at some point, right? Of course, that's part of it. Or are we training our people to be creators, to create something? And what does the future of work look like? And are we planning for that future? You know, and I have a whole lot of thoughts about where AI is going to take us and how that's going to change
artificial
intelligence, right?
Robots.
Yeah. Yes. Well, machine learning and computers being able to think the way that humans do and how that will change. And that's going to happen in the next 20 years. It's not outside of our lifetime. It's going to happen within our lifetime. So how are we preparing for that mentally, right? And or even now, right now, how offices are set up are changing. We have a lot more remote working, flexi time, people coming in and out, freelancers. A lot of things are happening in Jamaica right now too. And so are we preparing our people for that shift? Or are we using the same approaches, spitting out people who need a 9-to-5 structure in order to be able to contribute and create value? Or are we going to shift to a structure, an education structure that creates, people are thinking about creating value in the economy, hiring people themselves, growing things themselves, and creating the businesses of the future that will enable us to participate in where the world is going?
Where do we go for that? Where do we go for this passion?
Yeah.
Where do we go and get it? Where is it? In social media. Where is it?
For the training or for the mindset?
The mindset.
Yeah. So if you are curious, if you want to teach yourself how to think like this, you have to start reading a lot more about what's happening, listening to podcasts, going and finding that information about what's happening and how can I prepare myself for that. And I would suggest we have to go outside of our borders physically more and learn, not just to be a tourist, but to learn what's happening. Go to a conference somewhere. That takes money, right? Yes. So you have to have a plan for how you're going to get that money, and you have to plan in advance if you don't have access to
Well,
that.
at least we can start by reading and
Yeah.
expanding our own education.
Yeah.
Because it's important, because you have arrived at a space. Yes.
Take an online course. Sorry.
Yes, yes, you know, it's you have arrived at a place that didn't come overnight,
Yeah.
and you're here, and you have the messianic zeal, and you have the right stuff, but and we look on and say, oh, well, we want to get there, but how do you get there? You know, which is very critical. And while we ask these questions, we're gonna take on the blue economy. Quickly, what is the blue economy? People saying, I figure I know what it is, but you know, I mean.
Well, this is a term that's come up very recently, and so it's still, the definitions are still being molded, but it is any industry or business that has an impact on the oceans directly or indirectly. So plastics ending up in the oceans, or waste management, most of it ends up in the oceans. How we do farming and fertilizers, etc., leaching out into the oceans. Even energy and thinking about solar panels on the ocean. Some people are doing that. So anything that impacts that is part of the blue economy. And we have to take care of the ocean ecosystem so that it doesn't come and overwhelm us the way it did in the hurricanes. But even outside of that, fishing, overfishing, and what it's doing to the ocean ecosystem, coral reef bleaching. So all of that is part of the blue economy.
And including fishing.
Of course.
Including fishing.
Yeah.
All right, and we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to find out who is really Lisandra Rickards. Who is she? Who's this entrepreneur person that we have in our midst today? We'll be right back on Insight. Welcome back to Insight. Lisandra Rickards she came this morning, and she stocked up a storm. And she, when it comes to the believability index, she's way up there. But who, you know, it sounds like you're going for a job now, right? How would you describe Lisandra Rickards? Who is she? Tell me.
An explorer of ideas and places. So where we left off was creating that culture of curiosity and that mindset of curiosity. So I get antsy when I'm stuck doing the same thing over and over for too long. I need to branch out and see new places and do new things and explore new ideas. And so a lot of the decisions I've taken in my life have been about that.
Okay. Well, let's get down to real biodata, you know, the real graphics thing. Where were you born?
Here, Kingston, Jamaica.
Kingston?
Yes.
At home or Victoria Jubilee Hospital?
Not
or
all.
St. Andrew or not all?
Not all.
You're a not all baby.
Yes.
Okay, and so you were born to whom? Some basic stuff here, you know. People looking on and want to know, who is this woman?
So,
born in Natal,
yeah.
Kingston, Jamaica, and to whom?
So my mom, Pearline, is or was a civil servant here for a very long time. She just retired, and customs officer, civil service, and worked in government for a long time. And my dad, I would say he was very entrepreneurial and is very entrepreneurial. Okay. So he's had multiple businesses here and in the U.S., but lives here over his entire life, and he is very. He loves news, he loves information, and he does not like authority.
He does not like authority. Okay, there you
He's
go.
rebellious.
Yes. And all right, you know, I'm going to drag it all out of you.
Yeah, of course.
So because I want to know what prepared you to be here, not just on this show, but to be the space that you occupy in the working world. And where you got your values and character from. And,
Okay.
you know, those are important things in business, right?
Great.
Yes, especially if you become a board member. People want to know who it is that's taking our money. And the tribalist thing in Jamaica, where did you go to school? Including, not high school, including a little prep school, in the school, of, whatever you want to call it, day school.
So I went to Queen's Prep for most of my prep school. But before that, my mom was very ambitious for me, and so she put me in Hillel for like 1 year or 2 years, but it got too expensive, and then we moved to Queens Prep. And while I was at Queens, she said, "You're going to Campion. That's going to be where you're going." Okay. So I had that drilled into me from an early age. Okay, I need to get the grades to get into Campion. So I took common entrance. Am I aging myself now?
Okay. So you're one of us.
Yeah, I took common entrance and I got into Campion.
Campion. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so you stay with Red from the Queens. No, you didn't say the Queens. And to the Red of Campion College.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. You keep talking as if you're the only child.
No, I have a brother.
Okay, yeah. All right. Who's your brother? Where's your brother? How old is your brother? How old is your brother? Because then you'd have to tell your age, and that's not.
I can say that too, but it's no problem. Yeah.
All right. So, older brother, younger brother?
He's younger. Warren. He's my favorite person and my best friend. Wow. But he lives in Silicon Valley actually. He was working at Facebook, but he just left now, and we are building a company together as entrepreneurs while I'm also a CEO here in Jamaica. So he's 4 years younger than me. He's 30 or just turned 31, and I'm about to turn 35. So I'm 34 right now.
Okay. Yeah. What school did he go to?
He went to Queens Prep and Campion too.
Really?
You know, followed in his big sister's footsteps. So.
There you go. There you go. Any time for church while you were growing up?
Well, we were more, my mom is very religious, but my dad is, as I said, more rebellious and, so we had a more fluid experience. And I would call myself now spiritual, but not necessarily religious. So I got very interested in Buddhism. I'm very interested in the history of Christianity and the actual physical presence of certain people who lived back then. And so I believe in a higher purpose, but I wouldn't structure it in a very religious way.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's okay. That's an easy bar to pass on this program. You know, we've had those who are gung-ho and what have you about it. Okay, so what happened after Campion College?
Yeah, so Campion is a fantastic institution. And one of the things that happened there is that actually overseas universities at the time came to Campion and recruited there for colleges overseas. So that's how I met an admissions officer for the University of Chicago. And I ended up going there for college in Chicago, it was a very cold and snowy place.
Gosh, I have a niece there, and I understand.
Yeah, so going from Jamaica to Chicago is very hard. But University of Chicago is known for an extremely rigorous undergraduate program. One of the biggest core programs, so required classes. So I had to take classes on astronomy, I had to take higher level calculus, and I did an economics degree there that was very close to a math degree. So, which is why I said everything I said about math. But honors econometrics, honors statistics, analysis in RN when you're not even dealing with numbers anymore, but mathematical theorems. So it was a very rigorous undergraduate program.
Your undergraduate degree was in what?
Economics.
Economics. And
because I wanted to get a PhD in economics. I wanted to be Nigel Clark, basically. I wanted to get a PhD in economics and come back to Jamaica and be Minister of Finance and fix our economy and move us forward. That was my vision for my life at the time.
You can still have it, girl. All right, and how did you do?
Right, so, well, I was graduated with honors, but it took a toll, and I burnt out while I was there, because to do that well academically, it's sleepless nights, it's a lot of brain work, and I had to live somewhere else the third year just so that I could cope and finish, to be honest, right? So I moved to Spain my third year. My entire third year I was in Spain for a year. Sí, sí. Sí, puedo hablar con fluidez, pero no, eso he olvidado mucho, pero sí, puedo hablar.
Okay, all right, we won't confuse the crowd. What lesson, though, did you, for those who are going through school and overachievers, clearly, like yourself, it's time to chill, right?
Yeah, when I lived in Spain, it was the first time that I had allowed myself to exist without the pressure of grades and academic excellence that have been instilled in me by my mother, by Campion, by everywhere. It's the first time that I got a chance to explore who I am and what I like and what would I do if I didn't have this grade pressure that I ended up putting on myself. And I discovered that I like to travel. I love art. I love architecture. And my favorite thing to do is have a philosophical conversation about life and work and love over a glass of wine and really good food. That's my absolute favorite thing to do in the world. And I went back to Spain this month for the first time in 15 years. And it was emotional and nostalgic, and it reminded me again to step out of this role as CEO and board member and all these things and just be and exist and live and enjoy life.
Yes.
Why can't we have that every day?
Then there'll be no entrepreneurs. And the winemakers would be the ones with the money, and we wouldn't have any money after all to spend.
We could become winemakers.
Okay, so here comes a big part now. You've been with the Branson Center for 6 out of its 7 years.
Well, we're skipping a part. I went to Harvard Business School after college.
Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
Harvard. That's up in Boston, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes. I always remember the Kennedys.
Yeah.
Harvard. And what did you do there? I'll tell you did business, okay? What aspect of it?
Right. So I had a professor in college, economics of crime professor, who wrote a book that became very popular for economics. And he actually went to Harvard for his degree. And so he wrote me a great recommendation. And that was the only place that I applied to because I planned to move back to Spain. So if I didn't get in there, I would have moved back to Spain. Yeah. And I got in, and it was the best decision that I made ever to go and to try to go, because it elevated my life. It elevated my belief, my mindset about what was possible for my life and what I could do.
You did an MBA there?
Yeah, I did an MBA.
Yes. And the MBA is the best degree in the world, right? No?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because make you see the world differently.
Yes, and what you can create yourself in the world. And HBS in particular was less about rote learning. That was the first time I learned in a different way. It was about the case method, where you read a case on a business, and it's a real business, it's real operations, and then you came to class with 90 other people in your class, and you discussed, did they make the right decisions? What led to their decisions? How would you have made the decision? And it was just a completely different way of thinking and learning.
Creative.
Yes.
Thinking outside the box.
And the answers came from everybody putting in their ideas and the professor leading us towards a certain path.
And I'm sure there's some innovations that came up there that even the professor would be like,
exactly.
Never thought of that.
So it wasn't about memorizing and repeating and regurgitating. We had one exam at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, and all of our grade, or half of our grade, was based on class participation, 50%, and the other half was based on that final exam. So you had to participate.
Real life. But that's what happens at that level, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens at that level. And how well did you do?
I got honors again, but I had more fun doing it because I had more fun learning. And I traveled a lot.
This time it was honors at a capital H. H for fun.
Yeah.
There you go.
So more fun. It was more fun.
It was more fun. How did you get this job?
Yeah, so after HBS, I graduated in the recession, right? So no jobs in the US.
Yes.
Very hard to get a job when I graduated. So I came back to Jamaica, and I worked 3 jobs in 3 years, because after that experience of innovation, thinking outside the box, my peers were creating companies and making $200 million, exiting, etc. I couldn't come back and work in a traditional way in a corporate, etc. So I had 3 jobs in 3 years, started, left, didn't like anything, broke after HBS, broke. And I was like, you know what, maybe I don't like business at all. Maybe I don't like working. I should just go back to Spain.
Drink wine.
Drink wine. That was my real plan. And the day I made that decision to leave the last job I left, I got an email in my inbox from the Branson Center. I knew the CEO at the time, and she was looking for part-time people to help her train entrepreneurs in good business principles, 3 days a week. And I was like, okay, I can do that for 6 months and save up some money and move to Spain after that. And I'm here 6 years later.
You took that on. And oh, you're the CEO. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I had a great setup. Was remote working. The center was in Montego Bay at the time. I was based in Kingston. I, worked 4 days a week, and I got 1 day for my personal stuff. So I was a consultant basically the whole time I worked there. And then Lisa, the CEO at the time, called me up. I was on vacation in August in New York, working from the office in New York sometimes. And she said, I'm leaving the Branson Center, and I think you should apply to take over, to take the CEO role. You have to go through the same process as everyone else, but you need to apply. And my first reaction was, my leader, no, where are you going? You have to stay with me. And but my second reaction was a lot of hesitation around this idea of
being stuck.
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. Having that level of responsibility and having employees that are looking to you for their livelihoods and their direction in their lives, and being now enmeshed in an organization. And I had to decide if I wanted that for myself, because I value freedom and exploration so much. And at the end of the day, I decided to apply, because you don't know who you are really until you stretch yourself and grow into new visions and new ways of being before you really know who you are and what matters to you.
Take the challenge.
Right.
And you've done well with this challenge today, and I really want to thank
you
for being here, and we've learned a lot.
Yes.
It's not just about startups, it's about
scaling up.
Scaling up, and even if you start, you got to scale. So wherever you are, and we have scaled up, and alas, the time has come for us to say goodbye. I want to thank you, and thank you, the Branson Center, as well, for what you're all doing to help those at the top, because if their boats are floated, then our boats will move as well. So that's it for Insight. Michael Sharp saying pleasant viewing.